I already did a video reply for this, but I watched some of third person's videos like talking about this topic and just was thinking more about it and decided I have more I want to say. Also peep my cat Milo that you rarely get to see because he's so skittish and such a silly boy who's wanting to push up against my phone right now. But anyways, I take issue a lot with the second half of this comment. Eventually someone went covertly to the police instead of doing a call out. So third person talked about this in a video. I'm gonna link it. Strongly suggest you go watch it. But basically, this is like a very white approach for this to enact law and order, a third party to try to handle this rather than holding somebody in your community accountable for the way that they're behaving. In addition to the fact that by doing this in front of you, they are forcing you to become an accomplice in this and assuming that you're okay with it, and just like you yourself have a right to be like, I'm uncomfortable with this, so I'm going to speak up about it because I'm uncomfortable. It is not going to cause somebody to be abused more. Like, you're not at fault if you speak up if that child gets abused more heavily, because that's not your fault. That's the abuser's fault. That's your parents' fault. Speaking up is always the right thing to do. And narratives like this, one, they make people less likely to speak up, less likely to talk about abuse, which normalizes it. And two, it normalizes this idea that the best thing to do is involve police. And I'm an abolitionist, and I'll be the first to admit that in the videos that I've made in the past few days, I've talked about CPS and how CPS was called my parents a few times, and every time my parents told us beforehand that we needed to be on our best behavior, essentially, and not say anything that indicated that they harmed us, because then we would be taken away and the things that would happen to us would be much worse. And while my parents said that as a scare tactic, they're not wrong. I'll say that again. As a teacher who always felt conflicted about calling, being a mandated reporter to CPS because I saw the things that happened to my students when they got taken away and put in foster care, they're not wrong. The things that happen to kids in the foster care system, it's glorified human trafficking, essentially, is horrific. Oh, we got another boop. Another boop. I'm sorry, I'll pet you while I do this, but it's harmful. Instead, we should have community supports, and you know where community starts with people like us speaking up, instead of relying on cops who don't protect people. It's not their job to protect you, by the way. They never actually sign an oath to protect you. They sign an oath to protect the laws, to uphold laws. They don't care about what happens to people. They only care about themselves. But you know what did happen every time CPS came to my house? So much worse than any time someone else called us out in public. Because oftentimes it was due to something I said to somebody, like a teacher or something, and then teacher called CPS. And that made me afraid to speak up too, because I knew it would be relayed that like I had shared something, that's why CPS was coming, something I did. In a circumstance like this, where an adult calls out an adult's behavior, it's a lot harder for a kid to internalize and say like, well, they called this out because of what I did, especially if that adult calling it out says like, what you're doing to your child is not okay. That no child ever deserves to be hit, touched without consent by an adult ever, regardless of what they've done. That is more impactful, that's more effective to share within community than it is to anonymously call the cops, in my opinion. As someone who experienced both things happening, I would take an adult intervening in public over the adults or CPS being called any day. And also, I did tell CPS what was happening in my house, and we never heard from them again. Because CPS is just so effective, you guys. It's so effective. I can't even keep a straight face. Also, my mom's adopted, and so much of the trauma that I experienced is because my mom never coped with the fact that she was adopted or addressed adoption trauma. So on my page, just to be clear, we are anti-adoption. We are anti-government systems like this of policing. I'm not anti all government, obviously. I'm pro like Social Security. I'm pro more systems like that to give support to families where this is happening, because in my opinion a lot of abuse comes from people lacking things, lacking resources, lacking support, lacking whatever, to the point where they are so stressed and overstimulated that the only tools they have to use to try to get their children to behave in the way they want is violence. So yeah, so I retract what I said earlier about calling CPS, calling police, whatever. Like, if you're a mandated reporter, obviously, to a degree, you have to do it. But I think intervening on a community level is more important all day, every day. And I need us to stop, especially as victims, stop spreading this narrative that people who speak up are making us be abused more, because that's not true. The only people making us be abused more are abusers, the ones that are choosing to abuse us. What other people do, what other people say, it's our abuser's reaction to that is the abuse. It's not their fault. It's not their fault for speaking up because they see something that's wrong or bothers them. Pete, Milo again, about to knock my water bottle down. I think that's the sign that I should be done with this. But anyways, I hope that gives you something to think about and maybe consider, because CPS causes a lot of harm. And they do separate siblings. They do separate families. They do put people in homes with people who are abusive. The foster care system is a mess. It's a shit show, just like the education system is. And I was not personally in foster care, so I don't feel comfortable to talk about like the trials and what that entails, but there are people on this app that do talk about that and talk about how traumatizing foster care was, how traumatizing being adopted was. So maybe listen to those voices and consider, like, that's also not the option, like the perfect solution that people like to frame it as. Policing other people often causes harm still. Instead, let's work together as a community and set standards for what's acceptable behavior and what's not, and hold people accountable to that. And let's shame abusers in public so that they stop thinking that this is an acceptable thing to do. And then even more so, that leads to meet your neighbors, get to know your neighbors. Because your neighbors may be people who are doing this in their home to their own children. Become their friends, get involved in their lives, speak truth into their lives, point out that the behavior to their children is harmful, if it is. That's how we make a better tomorrow, is knowing people, building community, building relationships, not just on our phones, but in real life with the people we see every day.